Now, the third one that we have is the single request experience, right? Now, given that employee, we are providing a platform where tickets can be transferred from one department to the other. It actually enables employees to just request their put in their request only once. They don't need to do it multiple times. And irrespective of how many hops the tickets have gone through in the backend, the employee is still watching the same ticket number for all the updates that for the ticket, right? And finally, it's optimized the solution whereby agents are now able to resolve tickets faster, right? Because they can now collaborate and make sure that the employee gets the answer in the fastest possible way, which kind of brings me to the next part around what are the benefits that it actually provides for the agents, right? The first thing is collaboration, right? It gives the agents a framework whereby they can now transfer tickets across departments seamlessly. They do not have to worry about if the ticket comes into the wrong department, it is not as if they would have to close it. They have a way now to kind of transfer it to the right department so that the employee experience kind of builds on top of that, right? The second thing, which is very important, is context, right? So whenever tickets get transferred or ticket gets closed, what happens is that with the closing of the ticket, the context or the discussions that have happened as part of the ticket is also lost, right? The next agent who picks up the ticket, he doesn't have a clue as to what has transpired before and what he needs to do now, and he needs to start the process again, right? The context is available throughout. The third thing is around routing, right? With ML and AI powered routing, now you can actually kind of remove that dependency whereby agents have to do it manually, right? ML and AI are going to kind of take that request and to route it to the route department. And finally, it adds accountability. When I say accountability, it's basically you can now track the end-to-end kind of time taken to resolve the ticket using the SLAs and OLAs that are shipped as part of universal request, right? So that's primarily what universal request provides. So if I were to summarize what universal request is, it's, as I said, it's a glue that binds your IT workflows, which includes the likes of request management and incident management with employee workflows, right? Whereby you have apps like HR service delivery, procurement services, workplace service delivery. And again, if you have built custom apps, like using the app engine or the Now platform as such, you can now bring everything into this one single platform where everyone can collaborate and look to resolve tickets in a much more collaborative fashion as opposed to what it is now, where it is much more, where the agents are working in a much more siloed fashion without really interacting with each other. Moving on. Now, I'll just quickly go through a couple of questions that come up very frequently during our interaction with customers. And the first question that we always get, and this is probably the question that gets asked for every demo that we have for universal request, is what is the difference between an interaction record and a universal record, right? So interaction records, as we all understand right now, it's a moment of in time record, right? So an employee calls, the agent is interacting with the employee. Interaction records are created to kind of capture all the details that has been discussed with the employee, right? And then that gets converted into a ticket, or if it does not really require a ticket, then it gets closed out, right? So there is no workflow that is attached to it. There is no life cycle that it has. Whereas for universal request, with the help of the primary ticket concept that we have, you can now move the tickets between different departments, and employees can actually look at it and also get updates to it, right? So on a very high level, it is interaction records are just visible for fulfillers. The employee never sees it. For universal request, it's a standard ticket that the employees can see and actually track the progress of their request, right? The second one is interaction records are not task types. It's an abstract object, whereas universal request is actually inheriting the task table, right? So it has all the properties of a task. Interaction records can have multiple interactions associated with it. Whereas with universal request, you can create a child ticket, like for example, HR or INC or whatever integration that you are looking for your organization. You can have that with universal request, right? And the most important thing around interaction records versus universal request is there is no end-to-end reporting that you can do on a interaction record. Whereas for universal request, using your SLAs and OLAs, you can actually report and get those metrics out of the system as to measure how efficient or how quickly are you able to respond to employees and get their requests resolved. Moving on. So out of the box, we have integrations available. Like if you just enable this integrations or configurations out of the box, you can straight away start using universal request for this. that one is the HR service delivery, right? So for HR, the moment you enable universal request and for HR, it will, and you apply the out-of-box configuration, it will start working as is. You don't need to make any configurations for those. Workplace service delivery, it was a very recent addition to it, and it is now available for you to kind of, if you are having AWSD, you can use that. IT service management, the request integration is right now with incident management, right? And then finally, universal task. And this is something that we talked about, and it was demoed as well in during our last session, where tasking, universal tasking is a generic framework that you can attach to any ticket type that you have, right? Be it incident, be it universal request. With universal request, what we have done is we have given that out-of-box configurations where you can create child tasks and assign it to employees so that they can provide more information related to the request, right? So that's more or less what we have right now, and in future we will have some more integrations that will get added to this. But yes, right now if you are taking it up as a feedback, we will get these integrations out of the box. With that, I am pretty much done with my end of the presentation. I will now hand it over to Chini to take us through the configurations. Chini, over to you.
Thanks, Jabjit. I'll start sharing my screen.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, it looks great.
Thank you. So I'll start with the data model and architecture and the prerequisites for installing universal request, the plugins and roles that are involved. The mode of my presentation would be like I'll go through some slides to explain you the concepts and then show the configurations related to that concepts. And finally, I'll go through a demo which will cover all this configuration. So let's start with the plugins. So out of the box, we are shipping a couple of changes to the task table in the universal request. So that is a part of out of the box plugin called Universal Request Core, which is available from Paris onwards. And then there is a Universal Request SKU, which contains Universal Request Core functionality as well as a basic reporting. On the Pro side, we have Universal Request Pro, which contains additional plugins like Predictive Intelligence, VA, NLU for VA, and AWA. So you can get started by installing Universal Request plugin. Yeah. So coming to the roles that are involved in the Universal Request. So as usual, we have a UR admin. This is a scoped administration enabled app. So we have a UR admin who is scoped administrator. So this user can configure the whole universal request. And then we have the routing agent. So routing agent is, in the context of universal request, we would have a tier 1 agent, a set of tier 1 agents working on universal requests, whose primary job is to triage the universal requests and create the appropriate department tickets. And when they come back from other departments, they'll retriage them and shuffle to other departments. So that's the job of a routing agent, and only such users can be assigned universal requests. So that's where the routing agent role comes in. Next, there is a sensitive info agent role, which allows the agent, the routing agent, to view at sensitive universal requests. So a sensitive universal request is something selected by the agent or the requester as having sensitive information. So not every agent will be able to see that. Only those agents who have the sensitive info role will be able to see the short description and take actions on that. Then we have the your service owner, who is primarily used for reporting, who observes the metrics of how UR is performing. So how many URs are getting created, how they're getting transferred and stuff. So basically it's used in the reporting stuff. Then we have the UR read and write roles, which are assigned to routing agents as well as admin. So that's a basic access to universal request application and its related functions. Okay. So I'll briefly walk through the data model that makes all this universal request structure possible. So universal request is an overarching solution over the existing service ticket functionalities like incidents, HR cases, and all. So universal request itself is one tax extended table, which has a unique column called primary ticket, which points to the current service ticket which is active. So the way it is modeled is, at any time, the universal request can have one service ticket as active ticket, which is called a primary ticket. When the service agent works on the ticket and thinks it has to be moved to other department, or it has been wrongly logged, or it's not his part of the job, then he can move it to other departments. In such case, if the transfer is done, the universal request will be pointing to the other department's ticket. But the requester will be always looking at the universal request only. So this is to achieve a unified requester experience. So the requester will not be concerned about all the department tickets that are happening in the background, but he will be only looking at the universal request. So the way they are connected is, so as I said, this is the primary ticket which is pointing to the service ticket, and inside service ticket we'll again have a two-way reference to the universal request. So the reason is, once the service ticket is disassociated from universal request and a new service ticket is joined, still we need a pointer to this service ticket to make some operations, which I'll be talking about shortly. Okay, so for achieving this data model, the common fields on service tickets have been put on task table. So basically it is one universal request field, which will point to the UR to which the service ticket is associated. Then there is effective number. So effective number is nothing but a string field which will contain the universal request number if it exists, or otherwise the number of the service ticket itself. So this is majorly used in notification, where you want to hide the service tickets and just display the universal ticket number to the requesters and agents. Then there's one more field, transfer reason, which is populated when the service tickets are transferred. The tickets are transferred between departments, so they can mention the reason for which they're being transferred. So that's also stored in transfer reason. Okay, so now once you have this relation between UR and service ticket, so the service tickets may be having their own individual state management lifecycle. They have their own state management. So in that case, how do you surface the state of universal request to the requester? So for this purpose, we have something called state mapping, which defines if a service ticket is in particular state, what should be my universal request state? So this is an example. Let's say the service ticket state is in progress. Then my universal request state should be in progress, and there is a state reason field which should be in primary ticket in progress. Similarly, when the service ticket state has moved to on hold and the state reason is awaiting caller, let's say there's an example of incident, my universal request should have a state as awaiting response and state reason as action required. So this way you can define the states mapping between the service tickets and universal request. I queried on table incident, and I have a couple of state mappings already defined. Let me take an example of state in progress. I'm opening this. Okay, so here what I have defined is, if my incident state is in progress, put my universal request state into in progress, and I can update additional fields also. I've chosen as state reason should be primary ticket in progress. Okay, this is how state mapping works between the department tickets and the URs. Next, back to the presentation. Additional things you need to understand on UR and service ticket is the assignment groups. So when we say universal request, as I said before, we'll have a set of agents who are tier 1 agents who are triaging the universal request. So the UR will be as such assigned to the routing groups, which will contain agents who will also have the privileges to create the department tickets. For example, let's say there is an IT routing agent. He can triage the requests, the universal requests, and if he thinks it needs an incident to be created, the IT routing agent will have a privilege to create the incident. Similarly, HR routing agent will be able to create the HR case. So that's the purpose of tier 1 agents there. And on the service ticket side, they are usually, as usual, they are assigned to the groups that are defined on the BU that's handling the service ticket. So for example, in incident, we have hardware, software, network kind of groups, and we have IT agent as one of the agents to whom these incidents can be assigned. So why I'm focusing on this is, when it comes to transfer, the assignment groups will be playing a big role. So you need to understand which ticket is assigned to which group of people, because we have with the universal request as a layer on top of the service tickets, we have additional set of agents coming into play. So let's start on the configurations. When you start configuring a universal request for your particular BU or your service, the first thing you need to identify is what all services you want to register with universal request. So let's take an example of human resource BU that is trying to uptake universal request, and it has multiple services under it like payroll, benefits, rewards, talent, etc. So what it needs to identify is the services, that is the tables that it wants to register with universal request. And in addition, it also has to identify the group in universal request, the assignment group in universal request, which should be working when the case belongs to this particular service. Also, the services can be grouped into a service set. So the top level ones, the human resources, IT department, all these are service sets, which are nothing but groups of services. So we need a definition in this format. The reason being, when we are transferring tickets between departments, the agents of one department may not be knowing very much granular details of the other department. So they might be preferring to transfer at a service set level. Like for example, an agent holding an incident, he might want to transfer to HR, but is not very sure of which exact service he needs to transfer. So he can transfer to human resources, and the triaging agents of HR can take care of appropriately routing it. So this is the basic structure that we need to define to uptake universal request. So we'll look at this configuration in the application. So under the administration, we have this service sets. Here we have defined 3 service sets. And also there's a flag called universal set. One of the departments which we define here has to be set to true, which means if the agents are not aware which exact department the case has to go, the ticket has to go, then they can choose a generic department, which we call as universal request. Then the universal request triaging agents can chime in and look at the request, and then they can appropriately route it. So we need to mark one of the departments as a universal set. Next, for this sets, we can have the assignment groups. As I said before, these are the assignment groups that will be assigned on the universal request when the transfer is being done to this particular service set. Then we have service configurations, which is the granular level. If you look at comparing to the slide from here, we have some services which are defined under human resources, and one service defined under IT department, and the corresponding service table for that. Similar to the assignment groups of service sets, we have assignment groups of service level also. These are the groups that we have defined. Okay, so that's about the service sets and services. Now, how do we link this service tickets and UR? So when I create the UR, how do I create the service ticket? How do I link between these things? So the way the universal request is created is, usually employee searches for something, as you have seen in the previous demo. You might search for something, and if it doesn't find a result, he'll click on request help widget, which will take you to a form to create UR. So once the UR is created, the triaging agent will be looking at the UR, and he wants to create a service ticket. So for that, we need one UI action to be defined on the universal request, which will specifically create a service ticket. Okay, let's take a look at that UI action and come back. So I'm going to UI actions here, and I'll take example of, so on the universal request table, I have some UI actions defined. Let's say I'll look for create incident. Here it is. So what this UI action does is, I'll show all these things in the demo coming forward. So what this UI action basically does is, on the universal request, when the agent, the triaging agent of the universal request thinks he needs to create an incident, this is particularly for the incident. So he can click on that UI action, which will in turn simply create a incident. Here the code here is simply creating a new grad record for incident. And we have for convenience purpose, we have a property which is having the fields that it needs to be copied from UR. So there could be some mandatory fields on the service ticket. So on incident, we add some fields. So we're just copying those fields from the UR to the new incident, and just creating the glad record. And we'll navigate to the glad record. So that's the purpose of UI action. And now the UI action has created a service ticket, but the service ticket has to become the primary ticket of the universal request. For this purpose, on the task table, we have a business rule not on the task table, exactly on the service table, we have a business rule which will use a UR util to attach itself to the primary ticket, sorry, to the universal request as a primary ticket. So let's take a brief look at that also. So I'm going to business rules. So I'm taking example of this one, attach as universal request, primary ticket. So what this does is, this is an after business rule. After insert of the service ticket, this is calling universal request utils, attach primary ticket method, to which you will need to pass the current, the current is your service ticket, and the universal request is already populated because we did that while create from the UI action. And then the society of current record, and whether we want the last parameter is about whether we want to do the SOT management. I'll talk about it later. So with this business rule, we got an attachment from the service ticket to universal request. So as I talked in the previous slide, we have the two-way relation established between these two things. So these are the primary configurations that you need to do. In addition to this, admin can also configure the record producers to create UR when they are used. For example, if you have a record producer like create incident, I'm going to record producers. So there's a record producer called create incident. If suppose you want this mode of creation of incident also to be covered by universal request, on the record producers, we have this tab called universal request config, wherein you can enable the checkbox called create universal request. By doing this, whenever you create a record to record producer, even then UR is created and the service ticket is attached to it as a primary ticket. So that way UR and service tickets are interlinked. So once they are connected, the primary purpose of doing that is we don't want a requester to look into all these service tickets, but we want requester to be looking into universal request, right? So all the notifications also, whichever are coming on these tickets and for the events of this service ticket throughout the flow of UR and the service tickets, we need to update that notifications also. So let me go to notifications and show some examples like that. Okay, and the notifications here. Let's say I'm looking on the table incident. I'll take some random example. So incident assigned to me. You might be having this is not the one. Let me take this as random example of incident closed. So you can look at here. In the email notification definition, instead of the number field, you can use the task effective number. The reason is, as I told in the previous slide, task effective number is nothing but if the UR number is present, it will be the UR number. Otherwise, it will be the number of the ticket itself. Since you are covering up the service tickets with the universal request, you should change all your notifications to use the task effective number, which is effective number, to keep it consistent in a consistent experience for the users. So when we take the demo, we can see how the notifications will be looking like when we use the task effective number. Okay. Now let's come to transfer configurations. I'll explain the concept of transfer, what happens when you transfer from one service to other service. So first of all, there's an universal request. And say you created an instance for that universal request. So it will have the number as its own number and the UR is pointing to the universal request. And universal request primary task will be this incident. Okay, now the agent working on the incident feels that, okay, this is not belonging to IT, it has to go to some other department. So he wants to transfer it back to the universal request. So he does a transfer. Okay, that's one event. And universal request agent, or if you have chosen to directly transfer the ticket from one department to another, it also happens via universal request, but without the intervention of the tier 1 agents doing a retriage, in case the incident agent is very confident that it has to go to the particular department. So there's a direct transfer, or you can transfer back to UR and then do it. A manual transfer can be done to the new department. So in such cases, a new case is created. Once the new case is created, the new case becomes the primary ticket of universal request. As I said before, the connection between universal request and incident is broken here. It is no longer the primary ticket incident, but still incident has a reference to the universal request. Okay, now this HR case is assigned to someone and they resolve the issue, and then they'll close their case and they'll resolve this case and close it, which automatically closes the universal request also. Once the universal request is closed, all the previous service tickets which have transferred from there to the universal request also needs to get closed. So there will be a communication from universal request to the service tickets that it has been closed. So you can also close. Now here we have two key configurations. From the perspective of the service that is doing a transfer, you can look at two things. What should happen when I transfer? What should happen to the incident? What all updates have to be done on the incident when I do a transfer? And when the universal request has done its work some way and come back, what should happen to me? So these two configurations, transfer and closure, are two configurations that we talked about in the previous session. I'll just briefly show that also. But before that, I would like to discuss a few other topics. So once you transfer, as I said, there is a concept of direct transfer. So it means while transferring, the agent can also select a department instead of universal request, in which case an extension point. So what is this extension point? This is again another programmatic way of creating a ticket. So the uptaking BU should be defining an extension point with a code telling how to create that ticket, what all values to be set, and what all values to be copied from universal request. So based on that definition, the framework will call that extension point and create this ticket. So we'll look at this also, extension point. Okay. Right. So let me first give a quick recap of transfer and closure configurations and come back for the extension points. So I'll go back to the application. So under universal request administration again, we have this transfer configuration. So I'll again pick the incident table and let's see what configurations are there. So while transferring, there are two options. You can either transfer with a resolution or without resolution. What it means is whether your ticket has resolved the case and trying to close, or you want some other department to be involved and you have not completed or partially worked on the ticket. So I'll take an example of transfer with resolution. So in this case, what I'm saying here is when I transfer incident back to UR or other department with a resolution, what should happen to my incident? So the transfer state of my incident should be set to resolved, and my resolution note should be set like routing to universal request has driven this incident to resolved state, and I want the resolution code to be set to solve. Once the case is remotely resolved by some other ticket and the universal request is trying to close the incident, finally, this tab has information what to happen to the incident. So here I said my state is resolved, but here I'm saying, okay, the total case is closed. So I want my state also to be closed when the universal request is closed, and my resolution code should be solved permanently. And I can say some comments, closed state of UR has driven my incident to closed. So let's see all these things in action shortly. Okay. Then we talked about extension points. When we are creating a new ticket, we need an extension point defined by that BU so that your framework will be able to invoke that extension point and know how to create the ticket. So there is something called scripted extension points. There's an extension point that we shipped out of box called create department, which gives a templated implementation of how your extension point should look like. So there's a create ticket method inside this, which you need to populate from the BU side to define how the ticket should be created. We already have two examples here, one extension for HR department, one extension for incident. Here you have a link which says create implementation. Once you click this, you get an implementation just like this, and you can update the code for your implementation, your BU specific implementation. Let's open the example of incident and see this. Now incident has implemented this extension point. What this is saying in create department, create ticket is, it's very similar to the UI action that we saw it here. So this is again creating a glide record for incident and copying the fields from UR to incident. and saving it. So this extension point is used in the direct transfer. Okay. Fine. So after this, let's actually get into one demo of all these configurations that we touched off. We'll create an UR, create an incident out of that. And we'll try to transfer it. Okay, so for this demo purpose, you can actually observe some things on my screen. I have logged in as multiple personas that will be involved in this demo. So one is the UR admin. All these red tabs are under UR admin. Then I have this IT routing agent, who will be the HR's routing agent, who will try as the initial universal request and create an incident if required. Then we have the IT agent, who is the department agent, that is service agent, who will be working on the incident. And when the transfer happens, we have a HR routing agent at the universal request level, who will look at, okay, this ticket came back from incident to HR's department, and he can create a HR case. And I have the HR agent, who will be working on the HR case. And ultimately, I have the employee who will be raising this case. So let's start here. So I'll say, unable to log into ADP. I'm looking for this solution as an employee. I try to search for this. I didn't get any results, but I see this request help option, which will let me create a universal request. So I just say this. And there's a small option here, a checkbox, which you can check if you think your request is going to contain any sensitive information or confidential information, in which case the UR becomes restricted, which means only the agents who are having sensitive info role can view and operate upon that UR. So for now, I'll leave it so, and I'm submitting this request. Okay. So I get to see my request here, my UR number, my UR is created, and I can type messages. This is my activity stream. I'm seeing a title here. So this is called standard ticket page. We'll come back to this in a while. Okay, now let's go as IT routing agent, who is a UR agent who is triaging the universal request. So let's refresh and see. I got a unassigned universal request here. I open this. Okay, some important points to note on this is we have an ML prediction turned on, which has detected that this ticket will belong to IT routing group. So it is actually assigned it to the IT routing group, and that's the reason IT routing agent has picked it instead of a HR routing agent. Okay, so I can close this. I'll assign this to me. And as a IT routing agent, I'm triaging this ticket. So I'll look at this details. Some fields you need to focus on this is, you can look at the state of universal request. This is currently in progress. And the state reason is triaging. We don't have a service ticket yet. Okay. Now I think, okay, this needs to be worked upon. Let me acknowledge the user first. So I'll say looking into it. And on the requester side, you can see that IT routing agent comment has come here. Back on IT routing agent, I have a UI action called create incident. So this is the UI action I was talking about to create an incident. Now I get a new incident form, which is pre-filled with the details as per the UI action that we have coded. Okay, I'll give some work notes. Please check user login issue. This I am instructing the service agent to look into. So I'll create this and just save it. Now my role as a triaging agent is done here. Coming to the IT agent, he'll look at the tickets that are assigned to him. Let me refresh this queue. So he sees this ticket, unable to log into ADP. He'll open this incident. Okay. Now this incident has become to in progress state. So at this time, let's go back and look at UR what's happening. Let's refresh this page. Because we had a state mapping in place that says when incident moves to one particular state that is in progress, I want my universal request to be moved into primary ticket in progress. Sorry, in progress and primary ticket in progress. So this is the state reason that we were looking at earlier. So it's a state mapping that we were looking at earlier. So this has taken place here. Okay, back in the incident, I'm here as an IT agent. So I'll also acknowledge it. And for the requester, if you look at the experience, there's a system comment that says your request was transferred to IT department. Is not bothered about what exact incident it is, what the number of incident it is, anything. He just knows that it has moved to IT department. Now IT user has commented looking into it. Okay. Now the IT user finds that this issue is not belonging to IT. It is not about user login, but the account is locked by HR department. So let's say user account is locked by HR department. I'm just writing a note for some reason. So I want the HR department to look into this. Now I want to transfer this ticket to HR department. So as an assignee of this ticket, I can click on this transfer option, which gives me multiple actions. So I can transfer to a department if I know the department, or I can simply transfer to universal request. And the other options are which particular department and which particular service. Now the difference between these two options is if I say transfer to department, it's a direct transfer. It means the control will not stop at UR. It will directly go to the department using the extension point that they have defined. If I say transfer to universal request, the control will be moving to universal request and stopping there. Again, the UR triaging agent should be looking into the case, and they have to manually create the HR case by looking at the comments. So for now, let's do a direct transfer. I'm selecting human resources, and there are services that were registered in the beginning, the service configuration and service set configuration, which I showed you. So the departments are service sets, and these are services. So let me keep this at this default. And I say transfer without resolution. HR is blocking the account. Let's check. I'm just giving some comments. And I said transfer. Now the ticket responsibility has directly moved to HR. There's no need of HR routing agent again actually looking into the UR and stuff. There's a UR, the UR has come back to this, the control has come back to UR routing agents, but you need not look at that because the HR ticket is already created. So here I have one ticket created for the HR agent. I'm coming here, and let's say I want to, I find that this user has not performed his trainings and stuff. So I want to advise him to this trainings, and then the account will be unblocked. And the requester will say, okay, he'll do the thing and I'll close it. That's the story. So before that, we'll just look at what the information we have here. So it is showing that this is the primary ticket for UR. Now my current HR case is the primary ticket for UR. Back in the universal request, if you look at it, see this, the primary ticket earlier was incident. Now it has been modified to HR. Also the assignment group was also changed. This happened when we did the transfer. Okay. And still the state is in progress and primary ticket in progress. Now back in the HR case, I'll start working on this. Close this. I'll start working on this. I say, please finish XYZ mandatory training. And the user sees this information. You can see here the complete story is coming up. Okay, so let's say he completed the training. So HR tasks and universal tasks are put to best use here when you want to communicate this way with the requester. You can create tasks with all the details, a structured task with all the details, and the task can be assigned to the requester, and he can formally complete that and close the task instead of using this activity stream and updating all this stuff manually. But for simplicity, I'm using this process. Okay, so he completed the training, and then the HR agent goes and unlocks it. So unlocked account, done, and my work is complete on this. So I say I'll close complete this case. Okay, meanwhile, when we actually did the transfer, you can see on the incident, okay, I can actually show from the history. So when the transfer to UR was done, the transfer configuration kicks in. So that's the reason the resolution code was set to not solved, and routing to universal request has driven this to resolve state. So this is what we saw in the transfer configuration. And we gave the transfer notes. After that, we are closing the HR case. So HR case will not directly close the UR, but there will be an option to accept or reject the resolution. This is the HR flow. Now the agent can actually accept or reject the solution. So I'm accepting the solution. This causes the HR case to be closed. You can see the state, the HR case is closed here. Because this case is closed, my UR will get closed because I had a close state mapping there. So this is my UR, it got closed. Because the UR is closed, in turn, the incident will also get closed. It was earlier in the resolved state when I did the transfer. Now it came to closed. Also, the resolution code and notes were updated. This is happening due to the transfer configuration. Okay. So I hope I covered the complete configurations that I talked of before this demo. There are a couple of interesting things on the requester side. So this view that requester is saying is called a standard ticket page. You are mandatorily needs a standard ticket page to be enabled. It is available out of the box. You just need to make some configurations for your service tickets to show up on the universal request. I mean, on the standard ticket page along with the universal request. Let's see how that is done. Before that, if I click on the requests, ideally you would be seeing your incident or HR case which was directly created without UR. Let's say this case was an old one which was created without having a UR, a HR case directly created. So you're seeing this here. But this case, my laptop is not working, is actually an incident wrapped in a UR. Okay. Or if I take the closed case currently, just to keep you in context. So this is unable to log in ADP. This is a UR which had two underlying incident and HR case. But if you see, they are not showing up in my request page. So how do we configure that? So that's another configuration you can make. That's in my request filters. So for your table, let's say incident, I'm taking example of incident again. So in the incident portal, my request filter, you can define that show incidents only if universal request field is not empty. That is, if my incident is not attached to any universal request, then only show it in the list. Otherwise, don't show because the UR will be taking care of it. Similarly, you can define the UR filter is anyway defined out of the box. You can control your department's filters to not show when they're part of universal request. So that's the reason your HR case and incident are not showing up here, only UR is showing up. Next thing, let me go to an incident. My laptop is not working. So here, I'll talk a little bit about standard ticket page. So standard ticket page has this structure. It has an info region here on the top, which is like a header, and an action region here. In addition, it has all these fields on the top above the info region. In the bottom, it has this tabbed structure where activity stream and attachments can be shown. So you need to configure the standard ticket for your particular BU when you are using universal request so that this header parts can be dynamically updated by the universal request. Let's see what happens here. So the header part here, if you're looking at it, this is coming from the incident details. This caller is a field on incident. This caller is a field on incident. This urgency is a field on incident. This assigned to is a field on incident. But when I switch from this incident to other primary ticket, the activity stream will continue like this, but the header part will come from the corresponding, the active primary ticket at that moment. So how is that happening? For that, we have something called standard ticket configuration. I'll take you there. So this is standard ticket configuration. Let's say I'll pick incident again. So for incident, I've chosen on the info region. I don't want the description to be shown. The short description is anyway part of the standard ticket. And I have selected these fields to be shown. And I want these tabs to be shown. This is the configuration I made. Just to demonstrate, I'll simply add one more field here and save this configuration. If you look at this user standard ticket now, you have 3 fields here. Let me refresh this. You start seeing a new field here. So this is coming from the incident. While the activity stream and the ticket is all on the UR. So the incident is not visible to the requester, but the details are coming from incident here. So whatever you want to show from the primary ticket, you can show it on the header region. Similarly, actions are also coming from incident. So that configuration is also here. In the action region, we have selected an action widget as incident standard ticket actions widget, which is showing that actions. In the bottom, we have selected activity tab, which contains the activity list, and an attachments tab, which has the attachment. So you can have custom tabs also here. So that's how you configure the standard ticket. Okay. Next, I will go through the universal request properties. Okay, under universal request, you have some properties. Okay. Yeah, I'm universal request. So this first section about copy universal request. So there are two options: enable copy universal request feature, and whether to copy attachments from the one UR to other UR. So this comes in when you actually have a universal request open. Let me show it somewhere. So on the platform view, I'll pick some universal request. So here you have a copy. Oh, sorry, I need to open the universal request. So there's a copy universal request feature here. You can create a duplicate of existing universal request and also choose or not to copy the attachments. So these options are for that. So when you copy from one universal request to another universal request, what are the fields that you want to copy? So this is a common separated list of fields on the UR that needs to be copied. Next, coming to transfer type. Okay, this is a bit interesting. So we have four options here. When we are trying to transfer from incident to other department, we had seen this transfer dialog which had departments and services. So admin can control what level of granularity he wants to expose to the agents to select from. So it may be that the agents are not well aware of the other department services, internal services, and all stuff. So they may end up choosing, I don't know. So instead of that, the agent can themselves, I mean, for any reason, agent can themselves restrict what details have to be shown in the transfer dialog. One is universal request. So when you say universal request, it means you can only transfer back to the universal request. You cannot use the direct transfer feature. The agents cannot directly transfer to the other department. So the options will be shown only for transferring to UR. If you say department only, then you can choose only the service set level transfer. So when you select the department, like let's say you're selecting HR department, you can only select the HR department. You cannot select the services below that. So you can only transfer to the service set level assignment groups, and then you can only transfer to that group. So assignment groups will be appropriately updated on the UR. Then there's a department level transfer, which lets you create the department ticket, I mean transfer, do a direct transfer, and also create the department ticket without waiting at the UR. Then there is service level transfer, which is most granular. It's a superset of all the options that we have already seen. Currently it was in service. So while we were doing the transfer, we had seen options of transferring to department and the service level also. So that's covered here. Next, the portal that we want to use UR. So in the notifications or anywhere on the UIs where we are listing the universal request links or in the email notifications anywhere, the dynamic link that will be formed to the UR should be shown on a portal because it uses a standard ticket page. It needs a portal on which it has to be shown. So this is where you define the portal. If you have a custom portal, currently it is set to standard portal. Sorry, service portal, which is out of the box portal, or you can set it to something like ESC, or if you have any custom portal, you can use that. So standard ticket page will be loaded on that portal. So this is for your customizations. Next, we have this option, enable service transition comments. So these are the comments that we were looking, the system comments that we were seeing on the tickets, whether we want to show the system comments or simply show only the user, the agent's comments. So that option can be controlled here. Also, as we saw, when we created a ticket with my laptop not working, okay, I didn't create that, it would automatically transfer, set the universal request to particular assignment group. So there is an ML coming into play here. It will detect which group could be most appropriate for a ticket. So let's take an example. I'll search for my laptop is not working. And I don't find the result. I go for request help. I'm creating this, my laptop is not working, and I submitted this. I got this UR 420. If I look at this UR, this 420, if you look at this, the assignment group is automatically set to IT routing group because the ML has detected it as belonging to this group. So you can see the predicted assignment group is IT routing group. So this is what is controlled by the ML property here, whether we want this auto categorization or not. And along with this auto categorization, what is the minimum confidence level for the ML solution? So the ML solution should be shipped out of the box and primed out of the box. So you can set the confidence level at which you want the auto categorization to happen. So that's about the properties on universal request. Okay. Next, I'll switch back to the slides.
Great. Thank you, Chinny, for the overview and the configuration walkthrough.
I have a little bit more to cover.
Sure.
Yeah, let me show one more thing. So the transfer configuration is done. Okay. So we have SLA management also built into universal request. So broadly, this is how the SLAs will be defined. We'll have a resolution SLA defined on the UR out of the box, which will start the moment UR is created, and it will run till the end of UR's life, till the time UR is closed. And there is a triage SLA that we create, which starts when the UR is created and pauses when a domain ticket is created, because at this moment the responsibility domain is in service. So the responsibility is with the service ticket. So service ticket's own SLAs will be running. So universal request does not interfere with the service SLAs. So they run as is. So once the domain ticket is closed and the control return back to UR, as in the case of transfer back to UR, again the triage SLA will continue till the new domain is created. And again, the domain SLA comes into picture. After the domain 2 is also closed, we are back onto the UR. And we might be waiting on the requester for confirmation. So there also we do pause the triage SLA. It's not depicted here. And once the UR is closed, the triage SLA will be completely ending up. All these SLAs will also show up on our application. Let me quickly go back to my application. So once you look at this UR, I'll just see. There is it is on UR. You have a task SLA tab, which will be showing all the URs, all the SLAs that were triggered on my universal request. If I take an example of the one which had multiple transfers, we'll also show, look at this. We also show the SLAs from the child tickets, that is our service tickets. So there's a SLA, HRSD running here, and we had a couple of SLAs that got triggered on universal request. So you can check the SLAs also here. Okay, that's one. And a small thing to cover, we have this reporting under the universal request. We have 2 reporting dashboards. As I said, we can monitor the performance of UR and how it is getting transferred between other departments and what time is it taking based on the SLAs and stuff. So this is a agent level kind of dashboard. It shows the basic information of the counts information of what are the open URs and what are unassigned, how many has breached the SLAs, so how many are with SLA with risk, and how many are open for quite some time, 30 days. And this is what are the different department tickets that we are having for each UR. You can click on these bars and drill down to the individual cases. And then we have this opened and closed chart, which shows how many weekly URs are getting opened and closed, how many are getting closed. On the process overview dashboard, we have a little more information for the service owner, which shows how the tickets are getting transferred. So we had an option of selecting with resolution or without resolution, right, while transferring. So this captures how many were transferred with resolution, how many without. And this graph shows what are the sources from which URs are created. So it could be created from record producers or from the platform or from the email. So it captures the sources from which URs are created. Then while transferring, we have another checkbox asking we want to transfer the attachments also or not. So this tracks that checkbox, whether the departments used to transfer the attachments or not. And these three graphs will be tracking the timings that were consumed based using the SLAs in each department. In each routing group of the HR. So resolution time consumed by group means the URs have stayed with IT routing group for this long during this 15 days period. Okay. So similarly in HR routing group, they stayed for this long. In universal request, they stayed for this long. Similarly, what was the triage time consumed by each group? Also, at the departments level, what was the resolution time consumed by services? So here we see, because of the ticket that we created just now, we put one ticket in general inquiry and it consumed 2+ minutes there. So this is coming from the latest SLA that we used. And then this is another classification. If the tickets were marked as sensitive by, the agent can also mark it as sensitive, the requester can also mark it as sensitive. On the request help page, when we're creating the ticket, there's a checkbox that I showed which can be selected to mark the ticket as restricted. Only sensitive info agents can look at that UR. Otherwise, if the requester has not chosen the option, but agent thinks it is restricted, he can mark it on the UR. And once it is marked, it becomes restricted and only sensitive info agents can see that. So this is tracking that information, how many are sensitive and how many are not sensitive. Next, this tracks how many times the assignment group has changed on the UR. So it means this will give us a picture like if it is changing too often, then maybe the particular, there might be some agent planning required for the agents, like why these group changes are happening frequently. So this kind of outcomes we'll have from the reporting. Yeah, that's all I have to cover.
Great, awesome. So now I know we wanted to spend some time just discussing questions. So at this point, we have gotten a handful of questions back from the audience. So we can go ahead and walk through those just to recap the answers. And at this time, if you are an attendee, if you think of additional questions, please go ahead and place those into the Q&A panel and we can get those answered. So the first question I want to go back to is it possible to create universal requests from a case originally within HR or IT and vice versa? Would you ever convert a universal case to an HR or IT case? So Debajit, I'm going to go ahead and pass this one over to you. I know you did a great job of answering this in written format, but I would like you to just take a minute or two to discuss that with the group.
Sure. Thanks, Alison. So yes, so as I kind of wrote down in the chat, so universal request, for it to be created, it has to be created right at the beginning. So when you are creating the HR case, or the universal request is getting created first. So when for example, if the employee uses the request help option, they can create the universal request, and then from there you can tag it to any HR ticket. You can create an HR ticket out of it, but you cannot really attach an existing ticket to an UR, right? So even if, for example, you're creating an HR case, you could actually configure that HR record producer to kind of go and create the universal request right at the time of the HR case creation. Right. At this moment of time, we do not really have an option to kind of create a universal request midway. Right. So that's the context. And again, when we talk about transfers, you are actually transferring the primary ticket that is associated to the universal request. That's what Chinni kind of mentioned, that you have a primary ticket field for every universal request. So when you are transferring, you are actually transferring that primary ticket. So for example, if there is an HR case, which is a primary ticket, you can transfer this HR case to IT. So once you transfer it, the primary ticket for the UR would become IT, right? So that's how the ticket state would be handled. So that's what is transferring, is because you do not really transfer the universal request, because at the end of the day, employee is still referring the universal request to kind of get updates to it. So that kind of helps employee keep their experience consistent. They do not need to track multiple tickets. They do not need to worry which department is actually solving it for them, because universal request is actually taking care of that. So yeah.
Great, thank you. And I think that kind of recaps a couple of the questions that were submitted. So the next one that I will jump to is, can universal requests be used for case management outside of HR or IT for areas like facilities, legal, or procurement? And so the answer here is yes, you can set up universal requests to work with other tables, including any custom app engine tables. And I know, Debajit, you talked earlier about our delivered integrations today with HR service delivery, workplace service delivery, IT service management, and universal task. And you also mentioned the fact that we're also planning some additional integrations as part of our roadmap. So that is the answer to that one. And it looks like real time, we've received a couple of additional questions that we haven't written responses yet to. So I'll go ahead and read those off. So we received a question around an add-in in Outlook. So once this plugin is enabled, does it add an action in the ServiceNow Office add-in in Outlook?
No, for universal requests, we do not have any Outlook integration right now. It doesn't really use that plugin to kind of. So I just probably want a follow-up question on that. When you say add an action, is that action to create a universal request from Office? So what is the experience that is that you're looking for out here?
Great.
Okay.
So it looks like, yes, that was the intended use case there.
We don't have that right now, correct. And the second question is, I think, how is it integrated to Virtual Agent? Yes, so out of the box, we have a topic to create a universal request using VA that's shipped out of the box. We have some more enhancements planned for it in the upcoming releases, but for Quebec, you have this option to create a universal request from Virtual Agent. Chat.
Great, okay. So it looks like at this point, we are caught up on questions. I'll give it another 30 seconds or so for our audience to think through whether there's anything else on their minds. And while I do that, I'll just mention that we did record today's session. So once we wrap up our call today, the recording will be posted back to the community page. So you can go ahead and rewatch this great deep dive from the team. And if you think of a question after the session, feel free to go ahead and put it on the community page, and we can continue to monitor that and answer those questions. So it looks like we have not received any additional questions. So I think we can go ahead and close out today's session. So thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.